Humility allows us to grow because we know we haven't arrived. If I hear somebody say they're done, this is it, I have arrived, like, this is who I am. Probably not.
This is the Leaders Rising podcast. Creating bigger futures, building thriving cultures. We believe you can become a leader worth following.
Hey, Becky, welcome back to the podcast. We're halfway through the summer, and we've been asking people, talking all day today, halfway through the summer, highlights, best moments of the summer. But what's something interesting or new that you've learned or picked up this summer?
Well, funny you should ask, because as most people were probably outdoors enjoying the weather and swimming and having fun, my husband and I decided to sign up for investment, like how to learn the stock market class. So we were in a hotel conference room Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Barely saw the outdoors, and it was really insightful. Probably not what most people would choose to do with their weekend. So I can't even tell you one thing I learned. There was just so much. It was pretty incredible.
Well, hey, it's always good to learn something outside the realm of what we do every single day, day in and day out, and to see somebody who has passion, I'm sure, passion for something like that, to be able to present for 3 straight days inside in a hotel in the summer.
Yes.
You got to have passion for it.
He does, and he was phenomenal, and we learned a ton. So I can
all right.
on, but let's not.
We won't go into a deep dive on that today, but it is probably the most unique thing I've heard this summer. Because just a little while ago, I asked this of some students, and they said, the beach, spending time with family.
I know.
Nobody mentioned stock market lessons in the hotel conference room. So,
if you want me to embarrass myself one step further, the weekend of August 1st, we're taking the 3-day real estate class over the weekend. So
okay, through the same organization. Okay. So now we know who to go to for real estate and the stock market.
Yeah, not yet. Maybe someday.
Maybe someday.
A bit of a learning curve.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, there is a path to growth and development. And actually, that is what we're talking about here today, is your path to growth and development. Back on episode 4, we had Dr. Tom Niebel, but today's your turn, not to be on the hot seat, but to take a little trip down memory lane and hear a little bit more about your story and your leadership journey. So let's dive right in with this question. Take us back to your earliest memory of being in a leadership position.
Yeah. I could think of some informal ones. I think the one that stands out the most to me, that was probably what I would have considered my first professional opportunity at that. So my degree is in education. And of course, everybody goes through that last semester, which is student teaching. So you're assigned to a school, you stay in that classroom for a semester. And I can remember that first week of being up front and thinking, it was just last semester. I was behind the desk, and now all of a sudden I'm in front of 23 desks. And you feel the weight, like the responsibility of it. And I'm thinking, if you only knew how irresponsible I probably was downtown on my college campus last weekend, I'm not sure I should be standing here right now. But it was kind of a mindset shift that I wasn't really prepared for. I know how to make lesson plans and deliver a lesson, and had classes on behavior management, but nobody said, what kind of leader do you want to be when you stand up in front of those kids? What kind of impact do you want to have? And how do you make that happen? So it felt really uncomfortable, like I wasn't qualified to be standing there.
I think that's really interesting. Going back to your real estate and stock market learning, thinking about that learning journey. Jeff and I have talked about this on the podcast, that we often go through, we're inspired, we're excited by something we learn. We get the notes and we stick them up on our shelf because, just like you in the stock market, we haven't had the time to unpack it, to figure out, how do I put this into action? And that's a really interesting experience I had not thought about in those terms, of moving from classroom one semester to standing in front of it the next semester. Now, you're not completely on your own because there's a supervisory teacher there, but you're still taking a huge leap to jump out there. What do you recall in those first days in that classroom of what was going through your mind in terms of your confidence and your preparation every day?
Yeah, not only is that new, but that cooperating teacher, while they're there to help you, they're also evaluating you every minute. because they will be the ones that report back to the college to say how you did. And so it's this extra weight of you're wondering how to show up, but then you've got to make sure that for evaluation purposes, you're doing all the things that you're supposed to be doing. I can remember just going home from that and being so incredibly hungry and so incredibly tired because it was just so draining uh, to be on like that all the time.
What kind of feedback did you get from that supervising teacher in the moment? I know there was the evaluation after the fact, but any real-time feedback you got?
I mean, unless the wheels came off, and I can't remember that happening, would she ever step in? It was a challenging school within the district for one, and we had some challenging kids. And so she knew that, especially in the beginning, she had to come in and kind of run interference because this was next level classroom management, some of these kids that we had. So she would step in, thankful for her doing that. I don't think she faked it at all. She let me know that those were hard days and those were hard kids. And so we had regular sit downs and one-on-ones and how we could do things. But I remember one day she said to me, kids were just nuts. I don't know, high pressure system. I don't know what was going on with them. They were just nuts. And I finally raised my voice for the first time. And I remember after class, she said either something like, I was wondering how long it would take before you raised your voice. Or, oh, I didn't know you had it in you to raise your voice or something of that nature. So I didn't realize that I had actually done it. And I'd kind of hit my limit and I raised my voice that day. And I think she was okay with it.
Well, that's a good reminder that when pushed to our limits, that's when those stress behaviors come out. But they don't come out every day. They don't come out all the time. And when we're learning something new, we're usually on our best behavior, trying to sort it out and figure out what to do next. All right, so take us from student teaching. Did you go directly into a classroom in that next season?
No. So I ended up moving out of the state and started substitute teaching and tutoring in the evenings, and that was difficult. And based on the circumstances at that point, there was very little hope for me to get a teaching job anytime in the near future. And so it was going to be more of this substitute teaching, and it wasn't fun to do that, and especially in the area that I was in. Had to think about making a transition at that point. So never actually pursued that and got an education. But in the end, looking back, I think it was good. It was the right fit for me, and I landed in a career that I have absolutely loved for, let's not say how long, but it's been a long time.
Number of years.
A number of decades.
Well, walk us down that path, that career journey. What did you get into?
Yeah. So there was a teacher there, and one of the jobs that I had as a substitute teacher, and we talked about the reality of the situation. He had a daughter that was trying to get into education at that point too, and she made a transition to, back in the day, I don't know if anybody remembers, electronic data systems. Yeah, I was an electronic data systems employee that could go to work for Chevrolet Motor Division, so two big powerhouses, and they had a program where they were taking kids, young adults out of college and allowing them to really pursue two different career paths if it was their desire to do so. So I actually started at the bottom, started on the contact center for Chevrolet Motor Division, taking calls, saying, trying to help people get their car fixed. And I learned so much from that job. It was incredible. And in that period of time, realized that there's another way to teach that doesn't involve being in the public school. And I can do this in a business setting. And the fit was much better for my personality and for me. And so it just kind of morphed from there. And that was my goal, was how do I get into a talent development or training position in a corporation? And so number of moves and strategic moves, and managed to get myself there and have been there ever since.
What's your favorite part of watching an employee go on that learning journey in your time in talent development?
I think it's to watch people develop the skills that help them level up. And watch them. So it's not, you can be in a classroom with kids, you see the light bulb goes on, but they go on and you go on, and you never really see what happens to them. But I was in this organization for quite a period of time. And so I got to watch people that I brought in through orientation, moving into leadership roles and continuing to build into them, with the team that I was on, continue to build into these employees, and watching them do that or pursue something that was more of a fit for them or whatever it was, but just watching the outcome of that and watching transformation firsthand is I think what every teacher loves.
You're right. There is such a disconnect from an elementary, middle, high school teacher to seeing somebody on the flip side. I just ran into my middle school PE teacher last week at a pool. He's coaching a local swim team now, and he was out watching the swim meet and just reminiscing on that. I mean, I've seen him periodically through the years and seen other teachers, but there's such a long lag time. But we talk about the difference between that kind of learning where you get a certificate at the end and the kind of continued life learning, self-discovery learning that we do and we're inviting leaders onto. And that's a really good point, that there is a quicker affirmation or feedback loop, and both for the teacher and the learner to see that transformation happen. Yeah. That is kind of exciting.
Yeah. See what they can become with what you've given them.
One other funny aside, my dad worked for EDS.
Did he really?
Yeah. Around the time that Ross Perot ran for president.
Oh, okay.
I connect those two things.
Yes.
In my mind. There was a brief interlude. Yeah. That's funny.
They were a big deal back then. Yeah.
They were indeed. So in those roles that you were in, all the way from college and student teaching throughout your career shift, who were some of the leaders that stood out to you for the way that they led you and invested in you?
Wow. I would say my supervisor at Chevrolet was a fantastic person because he saw us all as people. You know, you could that contact center was 200 plus people. There were 12 in our group, and it's a tough situation. I mean, they're monitoring, they're giving feedback all the time. That can be very heavy and intimidating because you're performing in the moment. You don't know when you pick up that phone that they're listening to if that customer is just going to chew you out or it's just going to be an easy question. You just don't know, but it's the one they picked up and listened on. And he did just such a great job of giving that feedback, of holding us accountable, but knowing that we were young and learning. And he was on the backside of his career. I mean, that whole center was just full of college graduates trying to figure it out. And so he was just great too at helping us mature in our behaviors, as well as dealing with the phone calls and the complaints and things like that. And I'd had some difficult things happening in my life at that time, and he just held a lot of space for that and allowed me to do what I needed to do and so I could show up and perform well. So he was great. A couple of leaders when I worked for TDS for very similar reasons. They had a wonderful ability to see the talent in people, like what their bent was, and to ask. If they didn't see it, they'd ask, and to help people find that groove for themselves. And somehow, with all the work that we did, getting people positioned in places where they could shine, and just got the whole machine running. And you really take it for granted while it's running, and it just seems effortless. And when it goes away, it just highlights how much work they probably did to create that environment, but it never looked like work. And because it just, everybody was pulling together. They set the expectations. They had the goals that were aligned with the organization, and the work we felt we were doing was important and relevant and meaningful. You were held accountable. You knew what the expectations were. So it wasn't a guessing game. They were great ladies, and still keep in touch with them, still very much respect them and the work that they did for us back then and what they built.
Those are powerful examples, powerful reasons and motivations behind leadership to help people step up, all the way back to that first leader you mentioned, and seeing people as people and humans, not just cogs in the machine and widgets and producers of output, but truly people who can be led and developed. And I think there's something to what you said a minute ago, that powerful intersection, that it's not about how they showed how hard they were working, but it was the output of how they led that you knew had so much intentionality, so much purpose, so much clear motivation behind it, that there was a higher calling, a higher purpose to what they were doing than just getting the work done. Mm-hmm. And that's really important in so many workplaces today.
They made coming to work a pleasure, and that you felt that your role and the work you were doing was meaningful, and that means everything, especially when you're leaving kids to come to work and you've got other things going on in your life and you're trading your time. At that point, one thing for another, I want to show up and know that it means something and that I'm being positioned to be able to do that. And they were able to do that and create that space where we could all shine together and literally shine together. It wasn't individual stars, but we were pooling our resources as human beings to create some pretty great things.
That's incredible. Well, you've now turned the chapter and joined the Leaders Rising Network team. What did that transition look like, and how did you end up making the move into what we do?
Right. I still love what I do. I wanted to continue doing what I did. Because of the situation at work, I was offered the opportunity to go work somewhere else. And for the first time in my life, really thought about what is it I do want. And I still wanted to be in that space of helping people with transformation, bringing transformation for people, watching them shine and succeed. And I added coaching to that because now I get that front row seat to watching people transform and to be part of that journey. And so there was a period of searching and trying to figure that out, and serendipitous meetings and things that happened. And when I saw what Leaders Rising was doing, they were doing everything I wanted to do in the way I was doing it. And if I could have built for myself what Leaders Rising was already doing, it's what I would have built. And it didn't make sense for me to build it on my own. And I knew I didn't want to be by myself. I enjoy having coworkers. I enjoy creating with others and doing those things. And so I could have gone off and built something on my own. I have the skill set, I have the experience for it, but the thought of being able to do it alongside other people who love this as much as I do, and to be able to have those other people to sharpen myself on, and the support of it too, because honestly, making a transition from being an employee to being independent takes you through all kinds of mental journeys and emotional journeys, and to have other people who've been a little further down the road who you can ask questions to has been a huge thing also. And so it seemed like a no-brainer at the time, and I'm happy I made that transition. So here we are.
Well, and we are all happy you made the transition. I was thinking about this as we got ready to record today and over the past couple of days, thinking about this coming. And I thought, what was my first interaction with Becky? And I don't remember my first actual interaction, but I remember one of the first times I heard your name. Tom said, in a way that only Tom could, buckle up. You're going to want to meet this Becky. She's a powerhouse. She's incredible. And Tom's not wrong.
Thank you. That's the first time I've heard that story.
Yes, it's good to go down memory lane once we've, spent some months and a couple years now and leaning into what this next chapter holds. As you think about the leaders you encounter, maybe just having coffee with a leader, getting to know a leader, running into a leader in the neighborhood, what are your go-to words of encouragement?
Encouragement. I see the teacher in me always comes out. Now, it sounds like if all I have is a moment to tell you the most important thing, what would that be? And I can think skills, but I mean, any one skill doesn't make up the complex skill set that a leader has. And so it's like, what is that one thing? And I would say the one thing isn't a skill. It's who you are. And I would say this too if somebody asked me, like, well, what makes a successful marriage, or and honestly, I think it's humility. I think in the last 10 years, what life has taught me is that underneath it all, and for us to grow, and it's humility. To be able to say, I don't know, stop posing, to say I don't know, to say I don't have all the answers, to say I haven't arrived, because honestly, nobody has, none of us have. I think it strips away a lot of the nonsense we kind of go to work with. So I think humility allows us to grow because we say, I don't have all the answers. I guess it allows us to learn because we don't have all the answers. I think humility allows us to grow because we know we haven't arrived. Like if I ever hear somebody say they're done, like, this is it, I have arrived, like, this is who I am. Probably not. And then I think humility allows us to love because judgment and love just don't go together. And to be able to show up for other humans and lead them, there has to be this element of being able to love others and accept them and let them be who they were created to be and to shine in the way that they need to shine, and not think that out of pride you have to be like me or you have to do it the way I think is right. And I think that's the role of humility, not about beating yourself up. And we're not talking about that. It's just knowing there's always room for other ideas and for other people and for your own growth. I mean, that would be my one biggest takeaway for them. How do you teach that? Oh, that's a different story, but
if only there was a toolkit that could get to that. It's a powerful example. And I've come back to that a few times I was reading over this last weekend a book about, is it management? Is it leadership? And at the intersection of that, there is a power dynamic, but I think power with humility is a powerful combination. It's a really poor word choice to say power is powerful. Duh. But the point being, I'm 100% with you. Humility is so important. We can go too far the wrong side, but I think for too long in too many ways, maybe it's the world of expertise that we needed the experts that created part of that culture of power as opposed to humility. And so how we couple that and balance that, that's a strong word.
We need to come with competence, obviously. Leaders need to be strategic and be able to execute and all of that. But they don't do it by themselves. They do it with a team. And those relationships, the core of those is humility.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that's a good word. Well, Becky, thanks for taking us on this trip down memory lane through your career and some of these highlights. As we come in for a landing, we always wrap up with a bold move, giving leaders something practical and tangible to do. And for the sake of this, in a get to know you kind of conversation, I want to point them to resources based on some of your favorites. So let's start in the realm of books. What are your go-to books for business, leadership, or fun?
Fun. Boy, interesting question. And this is not an answer that you're normally going to get on a business podcast, probably, but I'm gonna say it, and here we go. So, an interesting question on the follow-up of the heels of the question you asked me about what would I most say about leaders. Very rarely do I ever reread a book, and I read all nonfiction. I stopped reading fiction maybe in my early 20s. One of my Clifton strengths is a learner, and it's kind of on steroids. Honestly, the only book that I have reread is the Bible. I'm a Christ follower, and when I think of the answer that I gave you in terms of, what's the one thing, and that one thing being humility, I can't think of a better source for learning humility than the Word of God. And that is that's my personal opinion, and that is my go-to. And that is the only book that I believe I've ever reread for that reason. Outside of that, the books that I read are usually the self-development ones. It's the skills, the insights, the transformation that I want, not only for myself, but for others. I was facilitator for Crucial Conversations, so that material has one that I have appreciated delivering, and so I enjoy reading that. Kind of how we work as human beings, I find incredibly fascinating. Behavioral science, I find really fascinating. So a lot of my in that genre.
I feel like you're one of those people who should have a digital bookshelf with that running list of what you've read and your recommendations. Because I'm sure, based on what you just described, it would be a wide array of fascinating subjects to dive into.
It's yes, from behavioral science to health and physical science, all of those, love them all. And
the stock market.
And now the stock market. Yeah, most people are like, do you do anything for fun, Becky? Well, it's fun for me.
Let's take a turn towards fun. If you were going to throw some music on at the house tonight, what would you put on?
It's just got to be good to dance to. That
Okay.
is my, some people go out and will get silly over something they've drank. You turn on the right music and it gets silly pretty quick. Anything with a great beat that I can dance to, I'm on board.
All right. And your favorite things outside of 9 to 5?
Oh God, my family, watching them. I've got young adults now. Watching them take on the world has been a joy and a half. I garden, I kayak, I love to be outdoors, hiking, all the things with golf when we can find time. All those kinds of just being active, because I sit here obviously so much during the day. Anything that just gets me up and moving is good for me, and in all different ways. So that's fun.
It's great. One of our interns this summer is learning golf. She's taking golf lessons.
Nice.
I was like, oh, that's a great summer activity. She and one of her friends are working on that.
My parents were insightful, and for whatever reason, they got my sister and I in lessons in grade school.
Wow.
And then when we
Really
had,
started early.
I know, right? And then when we had a family, I stopped playing for like 20 years, but you've got to love muscle memory, because I could grab that club, hold it exactly the way I did, and unfortunately swing exactly the way I did. There's a little work to be done there, but that was insightful on their part. So I appreciate them for that.
It's a good hobby and a good pastime.
It
Well,
is.
Becky, thanks so much for diving into a little bit more of who you are, what makes you tick, and I look forward to seeing how the leaders that we work with and the teams and organizations we're connected to continue to benefit from your wisdom and experience. And it's a joy to have you on the team. So thanks for being on the podcast today.
Thank you. Always great to talk to you, Aaron.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Leaders Rising Network podcast. Connect with us on LinkedIn or visit online at leadersrisingnetwork.com.